Hey all, Lefty Lounge Lizard here again. Welcome to today's episode number 7. I'll be showing you how to get Randy Rhoads tone. I'm focusing mainly on the Blizzard of Ozz album. All right, let's show you the signal change, starting with the guitar. The guitar I'm using today is a Gibson Custom Shop 2008 Les Paul SG 1961 reissue, done in sparkle green. And for pickups, it's using 57 Classics. This guitar is 100% stock. I've done no modifications to it. I'll just show the sparkle finish here. From the guitar, it goes right in there with the red cable into the Universal Audio 2610 tube preamp. From the Universal Audio 2610, it goes into my EMU 1820M computer sound card interface. From there, it goes into my computer and into the DAW. All right, let's look at what's going on in the DAW. I'm using Reaper. I'll open that up here. Ignore the fact that I've got a bazillion tracks. So let me open up the FX chain, the VST plugins. For starters, this bias amp plugin, this is where you create the amp, and then later you pull that amp that you created into bias FX, as you can see here. Let me go back to bias amp. This is just to show you how the amp is set up. It's not actually active. So, made a nice white Tolex based off of Randy's 100-watt Marshall head, which was white with black piping, etc. The settings, the amp settings, I pulled those from Marshall's Randy Rhoads tribute 100-watt head. See, it says Randy's preferred settings shown. So I set the bias amp to do what these knobs are set to, as you can see here. Okay, so back to the amp here. All this amp is, and I'll pull it up here from the default bias selection. We go into crunch. It's the 69 Super Lead. That's all it is. And I do a couple things. First of all, for some reason, they set it to tube rectifier. I put it on solid state because at that time, they were using the diodes. Also, for the cab, I bypass it. I'm using my own IRs here for the speaker cabs. So that is the Randy Rhoads 100-watt Marshall head. All right, moving on to the next plugin. This is a great little Mxr Distortion Plus VST done by Distork. It's 100% free, and it sounds great. What I'm using here, you can tweak it, but I left it at default and I just adjusted the knobs as so. Some output, distortion cranked. Moving on to the next plugin, we're using Bias FX, and this is the bias piece that's actually running. We see we pulled in the amp here that we had created before with Bias Amp. Same settings. But before the amp, we have what I use as a rendition of the Mxr 10-band that Randy used. This is just a simple 10-band EQ. And the sliders are based off of Randy's settings right here. So you can see we have a nice mid-range hump, especially at 500 hertz and 250. gets a kind of honky sound, but you can shape that after the fact. But it's really good if you want to make your guitarist sing, you boost the mids in front of the amp. Moving on to the next plugin, we have Poulin Le Cab 2. Now, the speakers that Randy used were Altex. Unfortunately, I don't have IRs for that, so I picked something that I figured would be somewhat similar. I went with JBL D120s. And all I have are a Shure SM57 on the cap, real close, and then a Shure SM57 on the cone, real close. Now, it's probably not exactly how they recorded it in the studio, but it's close enough and it works for me. Go back to the speaker. The actual speaker was an Altec 417-8H, and here's the frequency response. You can see there's a little dip here around 1700, and then there's a nice spike at approximately 3.5 K, which gives it a real biting tone. And then also it dips down here and then it jumps up again. I'm assuming that's roughly about 7,500. Again, this speaker had this kind of biting treble, which gave its own unique tone. All right, next in the signal chain, I've got a 31 band mono EQ, and this, there's no real rhyme or reason to this except for what my ears tell me. After the speaker cabs, IRs are placed on it, I use the EQ to shape as close as I possibly can by ear the tone that I'm hearing on record. So what I have here, I'm boosting the 125 a little bit, give it some thump, 250 a little bit, give it a little warmth, 500 for that honk, and then I cut down to 1K somewhat for more metal, and then boost some of these upper mid frequencies, especially 2.5, 3.15, and 4K. Cut 5K for a notch, sort of, and then boost 6K. So you get that, as I was saying, that Altec speaker has that toasty upper treble cut going on. So that's how I did this. Okay, next plugin. Now this is where the secret sauce starts. Everybody who was around back then when Blizzard of Ozz became available back in, I believe, 1981, and heard Crazy Train on the radio were blown away by the metallic screeches of Randy's guitar tone and the incredible chorus sound that it had, this grindy kind of chorus sound. Well, this is the secret sauce here. Not the Sound Toys Microshift, although it emulates it. The secret sauce is what's called an AMS model DMX 15-80. It's a digital delay. It's a British piece of gear, rack gear, used in studios, but it also can do similar things that, say, the Eventide harmonizer can do. So there's a nice big picture of the unit in question. Now, as far as plugins goes, Sound Toys Microshift, they have 3 style buttons here. The first 2 are like Eventides. The third one is like the AMS DMX 1580. So naturally I put it on the third style here and tweaked it according to ear, and these are the settings that I used. And this will give you that doubled, chorusy, grindy sort of effect on top of the bass guitar tone, and really bring it into the next level. So reading a interview by Jas Obrecht, who's done a lot of very, very interesting interviews over the years with some very, very famous players. He's talking to Max Norman as far as how Blizzard of Ozz was recorded. And I quote, and I'm reading this off of a website, regarding the AMS unit, says, on that album, the thing I used a great deal was an AMS 1580, which is a very clean British digital delay with a VCO, that's a voltage-controlled oscillator, on it, so you can slightly flange and stuff like that. I used that for a lot of things. It's got a real good sound. And further on, he says, if you listen to those rhythms on Crazy Train, you'll hear there's a real grind to them. That particular sound comes from the AMS. It's almost like a flange, but not quite. It does these strange grindy things if you get it at the right setting. Plus, you can get this kind of hollow tubey effect too. That's the same kind of deal. So, he used it all over that album. That's definitely the signature part of Randy's tone. All right, the final plugin I have here, I'm using the Waves IR1, an EMT 140 plate IR, and it's just a little teeny tiny bit. Nothing fancy going on here. Now, the last part is on the master, and all that is the Waves L1 limiter to boost the output. That's it. So that's all for this episode. By the way, for fun, here is the receipt for Randy's polka dot flying V, if you want to look at that. So we're finished for today. Next episode, I'm going to focus on Ronnie Leticro, not sure how you say that, of TNT fame. And until then, take it easy. See you next time.